The Caspian Sea basin, common land, tends between Europe and Central Asia because it has a lot of oil and gas. And at the same time, Turkmenistan and the European Union and the United States tend to pass through the seabed a gas pipeline that would allow Turkmenistan to take its gas to the old continent. This bothers Russia and Iran, that appears as the strongest on the Caspian border, but have enough weapons to prevent others from taking glories that are not theirs. It could also affect China, which up until now is almost the exclusive buyer from the Turkmenistan hydrocarbon. Caspian Sea, pipeline resources, and interest in dispute. This is what we're going to be speaking about today. We're going to have more information, guests, and as always, we have your critical thinking. Well, let's begin. Let's see. On the past August 12th, senior officials from Iran, Russia, Azerbaijan, Kazakhstan, and Turkmenistan met on the first economic forum of the Caspian Sea in Turkmenistan, with the international conference called Caspian Sea, Benefits of the Development of International Economic Cooperation. At the meeting, the Slovak Peter Burian, European Union Special Representative for Central Asia, told the press that the European Union had reassumed negotiations to materialize a Trans-Caspian gas pipe that would bring Turkmen gas to Europe. So without further details than that, we have reassumed negotiations. Let's hear the host president and then the Prime Minister of Russia. It is no coincidence that today we have gathered in the growing tourist area on the day of the Caspian Sea to discuss all the concerns of the coastal states and our neighbor countries in the region. There are many problems. My colleagues have just mentioned them, but we have also the need to talk about new opportunities to invest in oil and gas industry, electricity, transport, tourism, and agriculture, and of course, to concentrate our environmental problems. Our forum has a specific mission to complete cooperation systems at many levels with effective and modern commercial and economic cooperations in order to reinforce important policy decisions with concrete and mutually beneficial projects. The region of the Caspian must be totally open to economic cooperation. Okay, let's speak about the Caspian Sea that defines an inclusive region before two of the USSR and Iran, and now of five, a history of demands and counterclaims that could end up starting from an important agreement reached last year, establishing the navigation regime, regulations for the collective use of the Caspian waters, mechanism for delimitation of the seabed and subsoil, conditions for the laying of cables and pipes, and other aspects relating to cooperation between coastal countries. This is exclusively the ones that are in that sector. The Caspian Sea is a body of non-drinking water that stretches between Europe and Asia. It has an area of 370,000 square kilometers surrounded by land. It is estimated to have over 30 million old. Until 1991, it was shared by the USSR and Iran. Once the Soviet bloc was dissolved, it is surrounded by five sovereign countries: Russia, Iran, Azerbaijan, Kazakhstan, and Turkmenistan. They were complicated things by the regional tensions over its control. But in 2018, a historical pact was agreed after more than 2 decades of negotiations called the Convention on the Legal Status of the Caspian Sea and signed in the city of Casablanca. This document first granted special legal status to the Caspian. That is, it is not defined as a sea nor a lake. The difference is important because if treated as a sea, it is automatically regulated by the law of the sea of United Nations. That opens an opportunity to other states to access the resource contained therein. But if it's defined as a lake, it must be equally divided between the countries around it. In addition, in 2018 convention defines that the surface water is common use, freely accessible to the 5 coastal states, while its seabed, rich in millions of barrels of oil and cubic meters of gas, it will be usufructed by 5 at the same, as well as the various marine species that remain but decreased by pollution generated by the extraction. Another important act says that none of the actors can use any weapons there. This last part is very important. Let's keep it there as information, and then we will join them all up to build up this puzzle. And speaking of which, of the dispute in the Caspian Sea, and this last convention that was approved in 2018, let's see what the Sputnik news agency says. It says, great projects for the Caspian Sea. This was published in 19th of September of 2018, and it speaks of the Caspian Sea that is now awaiting new projects according to the presidents of the bordering countries. This is Russia, Iran, Azerbaijan, Kazakhstan, and Turkmenistan. And this was agreed in the city of Kasakha of Aktau of the year 2018. There was a historical pact that was agreed, of which we already spoke a little bit. And these are some of the projects. It's a center of logistics and transport of the Caspian Sea. This will increase the relations between the five countries. There's a gas pipeline, and we will further this information. A military base of Russia, of Caspian, that is foreseen that in 2020 there will be a hospital and housing for soldiers. There's an Iran route channel that is between the Caspian Sea and the Persian Gulf. And there's a big cruise line. There's a channel of Eurasia and the port of Caspian. Apparently, this will finish in 2025, and it will be able to operate with huge freight liners. Well, these are the things. There are several projects. This also speaks of the importance. And to add to this, we have Hispan TV that published on December 4th of 2017. It said that there's a huge cruise missile that has been incorporated to this float. It's called Separ. It's a class of Sina. It's the most modern Iranian cruise missile. This is from 2017. This is in the north of Iran during an army commemoration. It was launched to the sea. And it will be accompanied by 5 other warships that currently do operate in the Caspian Sea. And the 5 border countries that border this sea are entitled to having military presence, but not any other foreign actor, because it has given a new law status, because it's not considered nor a sea nor a lake. And that's how they conceive this possible. Let's go now to Turkmenistan, another hydrocarbon-rich country on the brink of bankruptcy. Well, beyond the situation, this report gives us more information about the commercialization, because it ranks 4th in the world in terms of natural gas reserves, with around 50 trillion cubic meters, according to the latest announcements of the state energy company Turkmengas. Although these reserves are not fully developed, the current production is over 75 billion cubic meters, with plans to increase it to 230 by 2034. 94% of the total exports of gas go to China, although Ashgabat has always aspired to export natural gas to Europe. And this is important because we said that, yes, there are the interests of Iran, but also those of China that are almost the exclusive buyer of the gas of Turkmenistan. Let's go to another note that supports this. Let's add another one. It's called the World Order. It's of Gemma Roquette. It's called Central Asia, geostrategic in center of the world. Surrounded by Russia, China, Iran, and Afghanistan, we find 5 countries that make up Central Asia: Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, Kyrgyzstan, and Stan. It is a region rich in natural resources, but characterized by an impoverished population. In the heart of the world, according to Halford Mackinder, English politician and geographer, whoever controlled the Central Asia zone was very likely to control the rest of Asia and Europe and obtained a privileged position to dominate the world. It is and will be a geostrategic area where many powers will play their cards. And further down below, we see unforeseeable projections. Central Asia has turned into a breeding ground for potential conflicts where political, social, and economical transformations are urgently needed to curb the various threats. The Americans offer military and technological cooperation to prevent infrastructures from crossing only anti-United States territories, as Iran, Russia, seeks to remain the main partners of the Central Asian states. It offers job opportunities and promotes integrationist projects such as the Eurasian Economic Union. China, on the other hand, invests in colossal projects such as the New Silk Route to position itself as the new faithful friend with projects that could lead to greater stability in the area. This is all important because it gives us a vision of the actors, and now we're getting close to their interests. Here we have this affair that we want to clear up because it all has to do with the necessity of selling gas and the others of buying. But this crosses with the interests of certain powers that have a part in this. It's not just a matter of who buys and who sells. There are several conditions that affect all of this. We'll be right back after our pause.
We are present at every event where our nations are staring. We believe in a new global vision, united in every broadcasting. We keep expanding our horizons and working on a closer and better communication. Now, in Grenada, Telesur, the news source from South America and the Caribbean.
Caspian Sea gas pipeline resources are interest in dispute. In recent years, Europe and the periphery are the scene of what we call the gas pipe war, and behind is the dispute between various actors. On one hand, Russia is advancing with the construction of Nord Stream 2, which consists of a pipeline capable of transporting 55 billion cubic meters annually, from the Russian coast of Germany to passing under the Baltic Sea. It would cross the economic zones of Russia, Germany, Denmark, Finland, and Sweden. In 2017, Gazprom provided 192 billion cubic meters to the continent, an increase of 159 billion cubic meters in 2015. The United States is doing its utmost to weaken the Russian and Iran in this area. It is therefore supports the construction of the Trans-Caspian Sea Pipeline. For its part, the Persian country believes that it can affect seriously the environment, said Beroza Namdari, a Persian spokesperson for the Iranian Natural Gas Company. The United States seeks to influence those countries with important deposits of the former Soviet Socialist republics, with which the collapse of the USSR in 1999-91 were left out of the orbit of the influence of Moscow. In this sense, the United States and the European Union act as a powerful tandem that seeks to weaken Russia. Although Gazprom sells more than two-thirds of its production of gas in the domestic market, two-thirds of its revenues come from abroad. If you compare the prices of those in Russia, they are 3 or 4 times higher than in the European Union. Well, let me introduce our first guest we had from Spain. He's a lawyer, and he's Carlos Martínez. Thank you for always being available to have your input. I would like to first ask the role of Europe in this dispute and their interests. Good afternoon from Spain. Well, the European Union is a fundamental part of this conflict. The European Union needs gas and needs petroleum, oil, because it is poor in natural resources. On one hand, the European Union is pressured by the US and their own elites not to strengthen with their demands these governments such as Russia or Iran, and on the other hand, they need to intensify their purchases. Donald Trump would like that the gas be bought from the US, and it's too expensive to transport it. So the most logical thing is that they get their supplies from the nearest fountains, which would be Russia and the Central Asian countries and Northern Africa. However, the nearest neighbor to Russia and in this context, there is the need to do this gas line that will go under the Caspian Sea, the Caucasus, Turkey. It will zigzag between countries that are not enemies of the US to be able to cover the European Union need. This could also have, this could be very long and have environmental affections. However, this is the only way to satisfy the European need. I ask you, Carlos, this Trans-Caspian gas pipeline would leave without use the other ones? No, not necessarily, because the European Union is a capitalist economy, and in this type of economies, while more competition, it's going to be better. So what they need is different offers, and so it will not be exclusive. And in case of any type of accident or change of politics or economics, so they're going to leave, both of them will be opened and have different providers, and this way they ensure a permanent supply.
puede negociar precios
and even they
siempre
can
a la
negotiate
baja.
better prices. With all of the factors that have impeded the construction of the Trans-Caspian gas pipe, what do you think is the strongest one? Maybe the dispute, this open dispute in the Caspian Sea?
Sin duda,
Well, without a
como hemos
doubt,
dicho,
as we've said before,
este gasoducto surge
this
para
gas
evitar, entre
pipeline
otras cosas, comprar
appears
gas
to,
a,
so
a
they
Irán
could,
y a Rusia.
they will be not, they won't
Comprar a
have to
Irán y Rusia,
buy
que son los que
gas
tienen un
from
mayor
Russia and
control
Iran.
sobre el mar Caspio, lógicamente se ven agraviados por la construcción de
So
este
of course,
gasoducto y
both
además
Russia and
buscan
Iran
sus
are
propias
affected
razones
by
para
this
ponerse en peleas. Y
construction,
muy importante
and they try
en la
to
cuestión
impede it.
medioambiental. El mar Caspio es un mar, digamos, interior,
The
un mar con
Caspian Sea is an
equilibrio
interior
hídrico
sea,
delicado y por tanto también un equilibrio
and it's
ecológico
a very
delicado. Sus
delicate
aguas no se renuevan como el
environmental
resto de
balance
mares del
because
mundo,
their
con lo
waters
cual
don't
de
renovate
manera que se produce
themselves.
un accidente sería un auténtico desastre para
And
el mar
should there be
Caspio.
any accident,
De
it
esta
would be
forma también es
devastating
lo
for the
que
Caspian Sea.
alegan, sobre todo las autoridades iraníes, para impedir la
So
construcción de
this
este
is why
gasoducto.
the
Y que, por
Iranian
tanto, por una parte
authorities
se defiende la
oppose the
propia economía
construction
de
of this
Irán
pipeline.
y por otra parte se alega un
And of course,
hecho
it will
real,
affect
notorio, que es la
the economy
peligrosidad
of
de
Iran.
la construcción
And
de
they
este
also
gasoducto por fuera del
allege
mar
that
Caspio.
there are too many dangers, environmental dangers. What about the U.S. of their need to having presence there? However, although this last convention that was signed by the border countries, according to which it is prohibited for any country outside these 5 countries to have any military presence, to be there.
Soterrada o no tan soterrada, hay que recordar que
Let's recall
la antigua República Soviética de Georgia
that Georgia
es una base ya militar norteamericana
is already an American military base
conflictos bélicos con Rusia por
that has had different military differences with Russia.
Se sentían más rusos que georgianos. Georgia recibe un apoyo inmenso
Georgia
militar
receives
y económico de
huge
Estados Unidos
support from the United States.
Procura, digamos, entorpecer
and thus they try to impede the Russian policy in this sense. Apart from Georgia, the U.S. has bases in different countries of Asia. That's why the U.S. is satisfied with creating these conflicts and polarizing the situation of these countries. What they try
un fuerte vínculo con Rusia.
Is all of these countries that were close to Russia.
Estos vínculos y las formas son por una parte militar y por otra forma.
They're trying to weaken these relationships on one side military and the other one economic.
De gas licuado, desde luego, ve con muy buenos ojos la construcción de este gasoducto y que supone
and what they want is
un intento de mejorar
an attempt to
la economía de esta república,
improve the economies of these countries, and on the other hand,
las ventas de Rusia irán a Estados Unidos, de manera que para Estados
not
Unidos
allow the Russians to sell their products.
Pero tiene muchas ventajas de orden geopolítico para mantener la tensión.
So of course, it's in their interest to keep the tensions high. Carlos, I would like to add now Fernando Moragón, who's a specialist in international policies. I would like to ask you your vision on how you see things, because hydrocarbons are the common element, and there's a struggle, there's a tug of war between most of the actors. Hi. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be with you. Well, in fact, the situation
trabajo de todo tipo de conflicto, generalmente, aparte de las dinámicas concretas que puede haber en cada país,
the underlying reason
intento
for this is
por parte de Estados
an
Unidos del
attempt
control
of the
de los recursos
U.S. to have
energéticos
control
de
on the
países
natural
tanto que los poseen
resources
como de los países de tránsito.
of the
Y si nos
countries who
fijamos en
have
el
them and
mapa de
the
los
transit countries.
conflictos
So if we see the
en el
map
mundo,
of the
pues veremos que
conflicts
hay
in the world,
una
we can see
correlación
that
casi
there's a
exacta
correlationship
entre los sitios donde
between
interviene Estados
the
Unidos,
countries
como
where
es
the
el caso de
U.S.
Venezuela, como
intervened,
es el
like
caso de Irak,
Venezuela,
como es el caso de las
Iraq,
sanciones a Irán, las
the
sanciones a
countries of
Rusia y los sitios
Iran,
productores de recursos fósiles, fundamentalmente
all of these
gas
countries
y
who are
petróleo.
rich in
Es decir,
resources,
o países de tránsito, como el
or
caso de
transit
Ucrania,
country
etcétera,
like
o Siria. Es decir,
Syria,
que es ahora mismo es una de las grandes
which is,
luchas que mantiene
as
Estados
of
Unidos
now,
por mantener
the
esa
greatest struggle
hegemonía
of
mundial
U.S. to keep the
a cualquier precio,
hegemony of the world.
bien a través de la guerra, bien a través de
This will
sanciones de
come
todo tipo,
through
económicas,
sanctions,
etcétera. Aquí
economic
estamos en lo que
sanctions.
los técnicos llaman un concepto de guerra híbrida, en la que
Here we have a
incluso la
hybrid
guerra
war,
convencional,
and
tradicional, digamos,
even the
de tanques,
conventional
cañones,
war
etcétera, es solo un elemento más
is just one
en
more
la guerra que
element
lanza una potencia o un país.
of a war that the
Y
country will
entonces
launch
un montón de
against
elementos,
another
como
one.
los ciberataques, como la propaganda, como
There's more
la
like
guerra económica,
propaganda,
etcétera.
economic war.
Entonces yo creo que sí, es decir, que
So I
al
do
final
believe
tenemos,
that
bajo toda la retórica que puedan lanzar
behind all of the
fundamentalmente Estados
rhetoric
Unidos, es
that
una
the
guerra por
U.S.
mantener el
says
control de los
it's a
recursos
control
económicos, de los recursos
to have
energéticos, por mantener
control of
también
the
el dólar
natural
como moneda de
resources.
intercambio internacional, de comercio internacional, basada en la fuerza, que a
And
veces
this
la
is
emplea de una
based
manera
on the
o de
force,
otra. Por tanto, el
therefore,
impedir
to
el ascenso de
impede
China
the
y
access
el
of
resurgimiento
China
de Rusia como grandes potencias.
and
Ya
the
se entiende.
arising
Ahora
of Russia as a great
quiero
power.
preguntarle sobre
I
esta
would like to ask
precisión,
you about
Fernando.
this.
Surge este convenio histórico,
There's
¿no?
this
A partir
historical
de la
convention
quinta cumbre del Mar Caspio que se dio en el año 2018.
in
Bueno, que
2018,
entre otras
and
cosas
among
mantiene
other
el mar como
things,
zona
it
compartida entre
says
los
that
5 países,
it's a
15
shared
millas de aguas
region between these
territoriales para
5
cada
countries.
país. Se adiciona una zona pesquera de 10
There's
millas
also a
en la que cada
fishing
estado tiene
zone.
derechos exclusivos para la pesca. Divide fondos y
It
recursos
divides
submarinos. Y hay un
resources
punto
of the
importante que se le
underlying
preguntaba a Carlos,
resources,
no permite la presencia
and it
militar
doesn't
de
allow
países
the
ajenos a la
military
región del
presence of
Caspio. ¿Esto marca algún triunfo
of any other
geopolítico
country
para
beyond the
alguno
5
o varios de
countries.
los actores que
Is
están
this a
interviniendo en este tablero?
success for
Sí,
somebody?
sin duda. Y además,
Yes,
en
without a
esto ya
doubt.
Europa es una vieja,
And Europe is
digamos,
now
conocida en este asunto.
knows this well.
Europa ya hace bastantes años tenía un
Europe,
proyecto que se llamaba
from
Nabucco,
some years
que
ago,
básicamente lo que
they had a
trataba
project
justamente de
that
traer el petróleo
tried
de Azerbaiyán.
to
Y
bring the
aquí está el
petroleum
problema.
from
El
Azerbaijan.
petróleo y el gas de Azerbaiyán no es suficiente como
However,
para
it is not
proveer
enough
a Europa.
to
Necesitan
supply
sobre todo
Europe.
el gas de Turkmenistán.
So we also
Y
need
claro,
the
se
gas
supone
of
cruzar el Mar Caspio.
Turkmenistan.
Y ahí vienen los problemas.
And this is where
Irán
the
ya
problems begin.
se ha manifestado en contra.
Iran
pero
has
Rusia
also
tampoco
said,
va a dejar
has
que esto se
spoken
produzca.
contrary.
Aparte que es una opción absolutamente descabellada.
And
como
this is
todo centro de la
this
nave.
is not a good
Y expliquemos
option.
por qué.
And I'll tell you why.
Primero porque es una ruta
First, because
muy inestable.
it's
No
an
olvidemos
unstable route.
que tenía que venir el gas de Turkmenistán, atravesar el Mar Caspio,
Because it would have to
llegar a
cross the
Azerbaiyán,
Caspian
la empresa
Sea,
local, que es
it
Socar,
reaches
que tiene el tema
Azerbaijan.
del gas y el petróleo. Como está enemistado Azerbaiyán con Armenia, tiene que
And since Armenia and Azerbaijan are
por el
in
tema de la guerra
struggle,
que hubo en Nagorno-Karabaj, bueno, y que todavía hay pequeños o no tan pequeños enfrentamientos.
and there are still some
hacia
confrontations,
Georgia,
they
país
would have to go to
inestable, que
Georgia.
ahora mismo está
That
muy
is
enfrentado con
unstable,
Rusia,
and that right now has
cuya
a confrontation with
parte
Russia.
de lo que era la antigua Georgia, Abjasia y Osetia del Sur son independientes. Y luego desembarcar al Mar Negro y entrar
And then
por
they have to go to the Black Sea and go through Bulgaria
al resto de Europa. Esto es muy
and
delirante,
up to
es decir, aparte de
Europe.
los costos enormes, es muy improbable.
Apart from
Esto
being
ya digo,
extremely
era un proyecto
expensive,
que
it
tenía
has
la
a
Unión
lot
Europea en su momento,
of
Nabucco,
risks.
y además hay una división interna.
And
dentro
there
de
is an
Europa.
internal division
Ahora
of
que estamos
Europe.
con el Nord Stream 2,
Right now that there's
que
the
Alemania
Nord
está haciendo una
Stream,
defensa enorme, porque le conviene, evidentemente, porque va a ser se evitan los problemas de tránsito de Ucrania,
is
y es
going
una
to
línea directa a través
relieve
del
the
Báltico, de Rusia
the
a
transport
Alemania, y
system
además
of the
Alemania se
gas.
convierte en distribuidor
and will be a supplier of part of Europe. Before, however, the policy was the contrary. And there was a Russian project that was to cross directly through Russia, the Black Sea, and distribute to the Balkans, and they will go up to Hungary, and there would also be reach Italy. This was vetoed by Germany in Brussels, but fundamentally by Germany, which affected most of the southern Europe. And so what Russia did said that let's do the Turkish Stream. It passes part of Turkey, that is Europe too, and from then we can connect to Europe. And with this, the geopolitics of the gas and oil are constantly present. And the United States lost all of their opportunities after the attempt of September 11. It has also to do because after the Twin Towers attempt, they tried to take over, to have access of Central Asia, which is Turkmenistan, which is the fourth exporter, and Kazakhstan, who has a great reserve of oil. Uzbekistan has a bit of both. And this is what the U.S. tried. And in fact, they even proposed a north-south pipeline. So they were going to pass through Afghanistan, and then using Pakistan, who was an ally at the time, and with which the geopolitics of the Caspian Sea is fundamental, because most of those countries are full of natural resources, like Azerbaijan, Turkmenistan, Kazakhstan, and Russia itself. And these are countries with coastal lines. However, the great producers have showed that they have no way of intervening in the Caspian Sea.
Ahora le pregunto, Fernando, y luego también se la voy
I would like to
replicar
ask you, Fernando,
esta pregunta a Carlos ya para despedirle. Ante las fricciones,
with all of these confrontations, with the instability of the route, as you said, the struggles with the Nord Stream 2, and the interest of Russia beyond this gas pipe, do you think that there's a possibility that this becomes a reality? Well, I see it really complicated. I see it very hard to be able to pass, because with all of the difficulties it has, we would have to stay with Russia, and let's not forget that the sea control is in the hands of Russia. And they even showed it during the war in Syria, launching cruise missiles in the Caspian Sea, with the authorization of Iran, so they could go to Syria, with which it's the real power. They have all of the military control of the Caspian Sea. And like things are happening now, there are small symptoms, but some that they will get closer to Russia.
¿Y cómo lo ve Carlos?
And how does Carlos see this?
Lo veo similar.
Well, I see it very similar, just like my co-guest was there. I would say that this is a moment of change, because we're going to see who's going to be leading this, and now would be a time where things should be rethought, and some countries should take over control of their sovereignty and leave Russia aside.
el mandato de Donald Trump está siendo desastroso para Europa y está
Of course,
perjudicando
let's not
gravemente
forget
los
Donald
intereses de
Trump's
los europeos en su
administration is
conjunto.
terrible
Si
for
eso
Europe.
sumamos que los ingleses,
And
que
to
son el
this,
mayor aliado de Donald
we
Trump,
add that
se quieren ir de la Unión Europea,
the
sería el
British
momento
are
de
leaving the
que la Unión
European
Europea
Union.
tome el timón de su política
So it's time
y
for the European Union to
especialmente
take
empiece
control in their
a
hands,
renunciar a
and
estas
they could
aventuras
renegotiate
de injerencia militares,
and
de
lead in these
sanciones,
adventures.
que a Europa no solo no benefician, sino que le perjudican claramente y que solo se entienden desde la sumisión o desde los vínculos históricos que existen de Europa
And this can
frente a
also
Estados Unidos
only
desde
be
la Segunda Guerra
understood
Mundial.
by the traditional
Lo mismo para Fernando. Siempre
history.
bienvenidos a la jugada
Thank
crítica
you
de
both
Telesur. Han sido
for
ustedes muy amables.
collaborating with our program.
Hasta pronto.
See you
Ahí les
soon.
tenemos, o les teníamos a nuestros analistas. Bueno,
There were our
sobre la base de
analysts,
eso
and
último que
on this
reflexionábamos, miremos si
last
la
part, let's
dependencia
see if
gasífera europea
the
también
dependency,
tenemos que leerla en
we also have
términos
it also
de
depends,
disputa antagónica
and there's
entre
also going to be
Rusia
a
y Estados
dispute
Unidos
between Russia and
específicamente.
the
Es decir, si
US.
está allí Europa en el medio de Moscú
Is
y
Europe
Washington,
just in the middle
con
of
el gas
Moscow and Washington
como
with the
una
gas?
gran asignatura pendiente europea. Eso lo analizamos
We'll
con nuestro
analyze
próximo
this
invitado. Vamos
with
al
our next
encuentro. La cámara lo
guests.
deja ver. Una pausa.
We'll be right back. Caspian Sea gas pipeline resources a disputed interest. Let's advance in the European gas dependency plus the competition between large companies. Europe has an enormous dependency on gas, and Russia is the one that most benefits from that. Currently, 34% of gas imports to the old continent come from the Russian state of Gazprom. That is why the European Commission is trying to diversify its sources of gas supply, either to reduce dependency or to weaken an upward use that of an increasing that is not an interest of the community bloc. But reality strikes. Western Europe totally lacks renewable energy sources. Germany, Turkey, Poland, and Czech Republic obtain from Russia 60% of their gas that they consume. Italy, almost 40%. Greece, 96%. France, 36%. Slovakia, 84%. To cite a few cases illustrating European dependency on the subject. In 2018, Gazprom exports to Europe reached more than 200 billion cubic meters, 3 times more than the volume of liquefied natural gas supplied by Europe by all the global producers as a whole. According to Gazprom officials, they expect European gas demand to grow, and that in 2035 it will increase to 85 billion cubic meters. The other powerful gas signature competing on this board is ExxonMobil, an American origin, and had Rex Tillerson as exclusive director for 10 years, just before becoming Secretary of State of the United States. In the 70s and 80s, Germany and then Soviet Union signed a treaty that was highly criticized by Jimmy Carter and Ronald Reagan, both the U.S. presidents respectively. The interference comes from long ago. Let's go with our guest, Bassam Tajeldine, an international analyst. Let's analyze should we also read the European gas dependency in terms of the confrontation between Russia and the U.S.? Without a doubt, this is a war. This is a Cold War, once again, between the countries who possess the resource and the European interests who need these resources for the development and
que no podríamos decir hoy en Europa y mucho menos en la Europa de los PICs, así definido por los centros europeos.
PICs, let's define this in English as PIGS, as the southern countries of Europe. Italy, Greece, Bulgaria, Spain, especially Portugal. And further to the east, where this project will pass, that the U.S. had already spoken about, that has important companies that have exploited the reserves. Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, and Kyrgyzstan were these companies as Chevron and Exxon, and others have had important investments, but they need to control that European market. The United States especially, they need to use these republics that are the owners of these resources for their benefit. But this is the war that always pumps up. It's the United States and their interest for not allowing Europe to be independent. And that they get close, they don't want them to get close to their natural ally, which is Russia. And it's not the U.S. that's on the other side of the Atlantic. And let's not forget that the European Union is not such a union anymore. And of course, the U.S. wants to impede this union to advance. Let's see what happens with the European with Great Britain. And with the support of the U.S. to Boris Johnson, who's this new Prime Minister of Great Britain, and all of the things that have been happening in these countries. Well, the truth is that at the bottom of all this, there's a war over the resources, these resources, and how to get Russia out of this. So why is it hot? Why cold and not hot? Well, right now it's still a diplomatic war. It's still cold, that they have attempted, and they've tried to make it chaotic, because these fundamental groups, there are these people from the ex-USSR, they're majority Muslim, and at some point the United States tried and failed to fill those countries with fundamentalists, to make this a total chaos. Well, in 1991, the USSR falls, and these countries become independent. And Chechnya was the first attempt of the U.S. to put chaos in the region. They tried it in there, but the movements failed, and there were some states that are puppets to the U.S. And now that Russia is strong once again and proposes treaties like what used to be the Varsovia Pact, the Warsaw Pact, the economical zone of Eurasia, now that Russia is once again the strong Russia that it always was, with a very positive influence. It's a very positive actor in the region. They've been able to keep the region in peace and to kick out these fundamentalist group, which has been a very old-time strategy that has been used throughout the world. But it's also a way to try to keep these fundamental movements to the north, like Russia. Do you think
Te pregunto como algo relacionado
I
con
ask
lo
you something
anterior,
related with the
que así
previous
como en
question.
otros escenarios, este conflicto, esta disputa que nos decía
Do you think
Carlos
that this
Martínez, ojo que no
dispute
es tan soterrada, hay cuestiones allí que son muy evidentes, se siga moviendo en lo
may
diplomático,
keep on
en
moving
estos
in
dimes y
the
diretes que hemos
diplomatic
estado
realm?
Yo creo que lo que vimos en la reciente
Well, I
reunión,
think that what we just saw in the recent meeting,
la Asociación del Mar Caspio,
this is
están
the
diferentes países que ella se
this convention of the Caspian Sea,
si no están representados directamente Estados Unidos, aunque
the United States was not represented there. There were only the 5 member countries. And of course, the U.S. has wanted to have influence of one of these puppets. However, some of these leaders are very old, some have died, there's a new generation, and they're much more committed to the zone. And they have a positive influence with these meetings. And this last convention that was held in Turkmenistan, I think we could foresee that it's going to be a great failure of the U.S. strategy to try to keep Russia far away, and also the contention of China and everything that has met this great project of the Silk Route through the north that will go through Kazakhstan and reach Europe and will be of great benefit for Europe. As a difference to this other geopolitical vision that has been pushed by the U.S. So there's one strategy to go through the north that will reach from Eurasia to Europe, and another one through the south, which will be through Pakistan, and in this case through the southern zone. So of course this is a very ambitious project and very well seen by the countries of the region. I don't think that these countries would oppose to anything that favors them, just to follow the will of the U.S., which will not benefit them at all. And of course, Russia and China are the main allies. So their natural allies are, without a doubt, Russia and China, which is a market that is consuming in greater lengths every year. So that's why there was a pipeline from Tajikistan to China. Now we would have to see if the U.S. strategy will vary. Well, maybe the intensity is varying because they're pushing the terrorists to put chaos in the zone. This has shown the great weakness of the U.S., what the Eurasian policy has shown. We have American strategists like Henry Kissinger, who said that this is the heart of the world. Let's see where the Trans-Caspian gas pipeline goes through. Trans-Caspian gas pipeline via European Union, US, and former USSR to challenge Russia and Iran. Trans-Caspian is a gas pipeline that, if it were taken and become true, it would transport natural gas from Kazakhstan and Turkmenistan to the European Union, Georgia, and Turkey, crossing the Caspian seabed and passing through the capital of Azerbaijan, the coastline of Baku, where we connect with the pipeline of the Southern Caucasus. so it would not touch the Russian or Iranian territories that are the current transit countries for Turkmen gas. It was designed with a projected capacity of 30 billion cubic meters of natural gas per year at an estimated cost of $5 billion. In 1996, the United States suggested the possibility of creating a submarine pipeline that will allow Turkmenistan to sell its gas and transport it directly. In 1999, the Turkmen government, in response to the suggestion, signed an agreement with two large companies to prepare feasibility studies. That same year, in the view of interest of Turkey, Georgia, Azerbaijan, and Turkmenistan to associate themselves for the construction of several pipelines, Russia and Iran appealed to the unresolved legal dispute between the territory borders of the Caspian. So the alliance went to filing cabinets. In January 2006, clashes between Russia and Ukraine give new encouragement to the Caspian pipeline project, but it was not until 2011 that the European Union Foreign Affairs Council agreed to give the European Council a negotiate mandate. Up until now, this is not yet true. But at the same time, it would compromise or affect Russia's interest to sell its gas to several to the European Union bloc. So it divides the actors of two sides that struggle, each one for their choice. United States gives its blessing because it would probably render Nord Stream 2 ineffective, while Iran and Russia consider that the project is a serious danger to the regional prosperity and would cause unacceptable environmental damage. They also require that a potential pipeline to be viable, regardless of the route it takes on the seabed, would have the consent or consensus of the five coastal of the Caspian Sea. So, both the Federation as well as the Islamic Republic, which are part of the gas producers in Central Asia, are in a position to veto any international agreement involving the Caspian and not have its approval. Iran, in fact, brings to light the treaty signed between Iran and the USSR in 1920 and 1941, still in force, despite the dissolution of the Soviet bloc. It is also a matter of concern that Armenia is isolated from the closer cooperation of Georgia and Azerbaijan and decides to strengthen ties with Russia and Iran. As you said, Bassam, the 2018 is a great triumph of these five countries, even for the peace. This last report completes all of the vision. So there are great limitations for the U.S. to complete their project. The fundamental thing is that the resources are basically in the Caspian Sea. But for you to be able to exploit these resources, you can cross aerial zones, but the underground are not connected, because you have to necessarily negotiate the extraction of the undersea resources, because they're all connected. So the neighboring countries will not abuse one of the other. The other thing, as I just already explained, is the border problems between Azerbaijan and Armenia and Georgia, and with these newly independent countries. These are political and border problems. There is no possibility to carry out this project without their consent, with the consent of Russia. There is no possibility. And without the consent of these countries. That's why this project failed once before. From 2010, Iran is buying gas of a gas pipeline between Turkmenistan and Iran, further north of Iran.
y China lo está adquiriendo. O sea,
And
ya
all of these countries are already buying
fracaso
Iran,
estadounidense,
China,
aunque
so the U.S. project failed.
hacer alaracas, como decimos aquí, alaracas, darle publicidad, vender
mayor
noticias.
relevancia a algo
So
que
why
no
give
tiene
it
relevancia.
relevance
Donde ya no lo tiene.
where
Gracias
it
por estar
doesn't
con
exist
nosotros
anymore?
compartiendo
Thank you
estos
very
minutos.
much.
Pasemos a nuestras conclusiones.
Let's go to our conclusions.
Modo de conclusión de ideas
As a
finales,
conclusion,
coinciden nuestros invitados analistas. Lo que
and
vemos
what
en
we
el
see in the
Caspio,
Caspian Sea, in these miles of territorial waters with its 5 coastal countries, can be summed up by saying, it is a war of control of strategic resources like hydrocarbons, uranium, and others. And in the case of the United States, let us add its hybrid war to keep the dollar as the international exchange currency and prevent Europe from relating to Russia as a natural ally by geographical proximity, which makes any exchange more profitable. It is the strategy of the United States of containment of Russia and China that also plays skillfully with the Silk Road. Companies take part of this litigation in a key zone, and the Convention of 2018 and the Caspian Sea is a geopolitical triumph of the 5 states of the Caspian Sea over the United States. We will continue analyzing this topic in our further programs. Thank you very much for being with us. See you tomorrow.